guys. I was just feeling inspired to come talk to you, and I'm spending sunrise in the hot tub. Right, like how does it get any better than that? So yeah, I just wanted to share some of what I feel like I'm really realizing with a lot of what I do with myself and wind up helping others with, seeing that I seem to be into things like self-care and spirituality. But I'm feeling aware that it's so clear that how we feel really matters, right? Which I've been talking about that for a while, I guess. And not that it doesn't mean we don't need to let ourselves feel the hard feelings, that it's not about overriding how we actually feel to try to just feel happy all the time. But yeah, so maybe it's a two-piece equation with taking care of our feelings and honoring this idea that how we feel is so important. So yeah, first piece would be that it's just helpful to do things that just help us notice how we are feeling. And I'm a big fan of paying attention to how we start our days, for instance. Doing some things that help us just tune in to how we're actually doing and let ourselves work with that, honor that in various ways, right? And we could do that through all sorts of meditation, which really could be anything. Like this time here in the hot tub is absolutely a time of meditation. I like to do things like my journaling there. That really helps me tune into how I'm feeling, notice how I'm feeling, deal with how I'm feeling, right? And even express how I'm feeling, and definitely change how I'm feeling. Also, because a lot of these practices, like something like journaling, for instance, really helps us not only get in touch with how we're feeling and how we're dealing, right? How that's playing into our lives and our relationships and what our issues are and what our worries are, right? And what our fears are, all that awareness that we get. But we're also getting a chance to let a lot of stuff out. I've been in conversation with a lot of friends and even clients about this new awareness a lot of us are in, that we do seem to do things like store trauma. So when we go through things in life, all sorts of things, right, that are normal parts of life, but that we can start to get traumatized in a sense. And even I would say this year has been traumatic for all of us in some ways, for instance. And that when there's that trauma, or it could be something that's happened in relationships and our creations and our ambitions, right? All the terrible things that can happen actually in life, right? But that we get traumatized, and then we have this trauma, it's energy, it's all energy, but now we're aware more and more that we store this trauma in our bodies as energy, and that this is actually the cause of a lot of our symptoms, and whether it's mental health struggles we're feeling in and just really feeling challenged with how we're feeling emotionally and how we're doing in our minds, or for sure physical symptoms that come up can be related to that stored trauma. So also that goes along with just feelings, right? And when we're dealing with feelings and having hard feelings, so it's really important that we do something to help ourselves not only notice how we're feeling, but also express it, even let it out, feel the feelings, to free the feelings. So it's things like my journal do that for me so much each day when I do that. And the way I do journaling is in the form like morning pages that I got from The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. That is still one of the foundational books and approaches to life and creativity that I use in spirituality. And so yeah, I do morning pages each day as part of what I do in the journal to help me, just notice how I'm feeling, notice how I'm dealing, what is true for me today. Also give me a chance to let it out, because it's energy, right? So it's actually giving me a chance to release, and even release some of that stored trauma, right? So it's energy work we're doing with ourselves and to ourselves when we do things like journaling. And other things like forms of movement, for sure, and use of breath can really help us release that stored trauma. And that's just really going to affect how we're feeling and dealing. So yeah, practices that help us just become aware of how we're doing and tune into how we're feeling, because those feelings are so important. And I see that if we're not feeling good emotionally, it's really affects how we're thinking, how we're focusing, right? How we're approaching life. It definitely affects how we're feeling in our bodies. So it's fascinating to me to see that just taking care of how we're feeling each day could be the most important thing that we can do. And that also, if we believe in vibration and law of attraction, that I do believe that whatever energy we're in, which means however we're feeling, is going to totally attract in what's going to happen for us that day, and what versions of our loved ones we're going to rendezvous with, and how things are going to go and flow. So taking care of how we feel totally can transform our day too. And so that's the other piece too, that not only becoming aware of how we're feeling, doing things to keep tuning in, tapping in, and then doing things that help us release and express and even transmute and transform those feelings, which so many things can do, including all sorts of practices of creativity, including even things like dance, any sort of movement or breath. Again, it's going to help us just get things released, flowing, freed up, and really changing how we're feeling, right? And then, the bonus that when we're doing things to take care of how we feel, and that also then means doing things that we love, right? Being intentional with our days and how we're using our time and our focus, right? And how much that's cultivating how we're feeling. So what we're watching, who we're talking to, what we're thinking about matters. So we can do simple things like, being more in that gratitude mode, just whether we're doing things like making lists, like gratitude lists, or just in life, finding ourselves just kind of aiming to talk about, think about, focus on more what we're thankful for, than, which is the opposite of that would be what? Like kind of complaining, right? Which, not that there's not room to vent or express, but we can just start to tune into how that's making us feel. And again, that those feelings are so important. And then I notice that once we're feeling more like good, which does, again, is going to happen through feeling the feelings. So tears, more crying for all of us is probably part of feeling better, I would say, for instance. Because again, things like tears really help us release that energy, that stored trauma. And also things like tears have that chemical effect on us, kind of like what those meds do that we get from the doctors for our moods, the antidepressants, for instance. Those chemicals that we're trying to mimic in the brain, those things come out when we do cry. So if we let ourselves cry more, for instance, which may happen when we're tuning into those feelings, when we're journaling, some of us might have resistance to something like that, because it means we are going to see how we're feeling and feel how we're feeling. But the more that we can find ways to let ourselves move through those feelings, and that, may mean more crying to actually feel happier and better. And I see now that it's partly because, yes, that chemical effect, that it's actually boosting your serotonin and those mood enhancing chemicals that naturally occur. So tears do that every time we cry. It's actually our body's way of trying to help us feel better in our mood. And that's so cool. But also that, there's a momentum thing to it too. That's why I'm a big fan of being consistent with it and not just waiting till we feel bad to do our practices, but the more that we do it in like a preventative way and an everyday way, then we can stay out of the extreme lows, and it's just even easier to shift because it's all energy. So there is a momentum to it. So it is going to kind of increase whatever mode we're in. So that's why once we start kind of feeling bad and just kind of staying in that, right, even if we see some ways we might shift, it might tend to just get worse and worse and worse and worse, right? And so that's where do whatever you need to do from where you are. But I'm a big fan of preventatively attending to how we feel and building it into our lifestyle, and just continuing to be fascinated with how important that is, not only in our physical health and in just how we're feeling emotionally, right? And how we're able to enjoy our moments in our lives and how our lives go. Again, because the energy you're in, the way you feel is, I do believe, attracting what's happening to you. But then, also the better we're feeling, the better we're thinking, and that's when we tend to get in that inspiration and the great ideas and really connecting in with our purpose and passion and realizing what we want to be doing in life, and even feeling ways we want to do that. And if we like to be spiritual, there's a lot of talk, and I feel it's true that the better we're feeling in a lot of ways, the more open we are to connecting spiritually, right? Like feeling connected to God or spirit or the universe or your angels or your ancestors. So that goes with that. Improving how we feel thing also goes with feeling more connected. But then it's so neat to think that the best way to help us feel better is to reconnect too. And that's where it brings it back to anything that reconnects you, more of that. And sure, you can call that yoga because yoga means to connect or to join. So if you like that word, yes. But yeah, where how connected we're feeling is going to help us feel better. But then if we're not feeling good, to reach out for things that do reconnect us is the way to feel better, right? So that's where it's like build it in as a lifestyle. And again, that where maybe like through music you listen to. Music's a big tool of mine, really a vibrational tool, really shifts our energy. So even if it's just like listening to more music that you love, or going outside more if you know that works for you, or dancing more, or paying attention to what you're listening to, who you're listening to, that is tuning you right. So yeah, I'm excited about and fascinated with the power of taking care of how we feel, and that it's not something we want to ignore or keep ignoring, especially if we're not feeling great, right? It's like, but important again to let ourselves feel that, get into more, why, and expressing it, releasing it, transforming it, transmuting it in the ways that we start to realize work for us, and living a life that's even more connected and inspired, and I would say even more in our purpose and passion the more that we make this a priority, right? So excited to share with you as I'm doing something extra special this morning by being in the hot tub at sunrise. So yeah, I'm absolutely sure that this is helping me feel amazing, and even being the inspiration to make a video for you, right? And totally know it's going to shape my day and be part of the magic that I align with. So thanks for listening, guys. I think this is cool. Let me know what you think. All right, love you so much. Namaste.